What's going on YouTube? This is Brian916. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. So this is part 3 of the Dodge engine rebuild. In this particular video, we're going to get the engine up on the engine stand, and we'll start stripping it down, do a brief inspection on it, and show you how to get the engine prepped to go to a machine shop. So let's get this thing on the stand and let's tear it down. Alright guys, so we need to get the flywheel off, and before we put it on the stand, so I like to mark them just so I'm certain when I'm putting it back together that this is the way it was. So you can make any little mark that you want. Just so you know that that's the way it was on there. So let's buzz these bolts out. So we got Loctite on these. So we'll make sure we get some more Loctite back on them. Alright, so we got our flywheel off. We got it marked so we know which way it goes on. We'll mark this little plate as well, so we know. Whenever you store these things, store them somewhere where you can keep it nice and flat and it don't get bent. Trust me, you'll be thankful you did later. All right, let's get it chained up. If you were in part 2, when we removed the motor, he asked me where did I put the chain at. So if you're watching this video, when I removed the engine initially, this is where I put the chain. So I'll put one bolt here in the back, and then run it across, put it on the other side. I'll show you where I'll put it on the other side. And then on the front, I just put it right here. Alright, let's throw it on the cherry picker. Mount these up is I'll take this out of the engine stand and I'll put it on the back of the motor first, and then all together slide it into the engine stand. Well, that's how I get mine on the stand, and I've never had a problem getting it on the way I just put it on. So now that we got this thing on the stand, we can go ahead and start tearing it down. Get our cylinder head off, timing covers, timing chains, flip it upside down, get our oil pan, motor mounts, start tearing it down, do some inspection on it, and see if we can give the machine shop any useful information. Alright, I'm going to start by getting this harmonic balancer off. We got that harmonic balancer off, so let's start getting the timing cover bolts out and get this timing cover off. Get those motor mounts off, peel this gasket off. Alright, now let's get these motor mounts out. basically check and see if there's a left or right marking on these. And if it don't have one, then I'll mark it myself. So this is the right side. Helps with reassembly. This motor mount, I'm not gonna label because it's busted. So we're gonna get him another motor mount. All right, well, since it's already on this side, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this manifold. Alright, so let's get this oil filter off. Alright, so I'm going to take the oil pressure switch here, and there's a ground bolt here. Usually when I have a random ground bolt here, I'll probably remember anyway, but I'll just put it in a Ziploc bag and I'll be descriptive as to where I took it from. Looks like this oil pressure switch, 27 millimeter. Get this coolant tint in the same bag. We still got another sensor here, the cam position sensor, so let's get that out. We'll just bag up all the sensors together. Then we got another ground bolt right here on the other side. And we'll label that one as well for the opposite side. Okay, and now while we got it like this already, we'll go ahead and remove this manifold. see we got one broken bolt here, broken. Oh, look at that. Nice. Don't get lucky like that every day. Let's get these valve covers off. Somewhat like a blown head gasket. Those of you out there who's changed blown head gaskets before know that smell. And it's actually pretty clean in here. Better than I thought it would look. All right, let's get this side off. Under the valve covers look pretty good as well. It's not a whole bunch of dirt caked under here and sludge caked under here. That's pretty good. All right, getting down to the nitty gritty. Down to the fun parts. Let's see, where do we want to go? Before we start tearing it down, the timing, just for inspection purposes, we're gonna rotate this motor and get everything on the timing marks, just to see if the timing was off or anything like that, just for our own knowledge. So let's rotate it and see if these timing marks line up. Let's see. Alright, so this dot down here should be in a 6 o'clock. Let's get it on the 6. Alright, so that's the 6. This should be on a 12. And then these V8 should be pointing straight up. So it looks pretty good to me. Looks like the timing is on, just to make sure we didn't have any engine problems on our initial inspection due to timing being off a bit, but that's not the case, so that's good to know. All right, moving right along. Let's start getting these tensioners out. Get these tensioners out. Not too concerned about keeping these tensioners. I'm gonna get a whole new timing kit. This is gonna be a full rebuild, so not really using any of the guides, the chains, the tensioners. All the stuff will be brand new. 1 1/8. Same as 29mm. That's on there. Looks like they use Loctite to put this on. Best to use thread sealer or something like that. Lots of Loctite. Okay, so now we can get that bolt through there. Okay, got all our guys loose. Now let's get this guy loose. Wow. Alright guys, so I'm probably going to just keep this cam gear or buy an OE one, because you can see it's got triggers here for the cam sensor, and if you get a cheap aftermarket one and maybe the triggers aren't exactly in the right location and you start getting a misfire code or a cam correlation code, and it's going to be really hard to track down what's going on, and it was all because you bought a cheap part like this. So we're going to keep this one. Even if we get a kit that has this replacement, we're probably going to just keep this OE part or get a genuine Mopar. So let's get the guides out, but there's 2 more bolts, and these are Torx style bolts, which is nice because I don't have to go and get my set. I could just use that Sonic set without walking away. Well, spoke too soon. Well, too bad the head of this won't fit in there. I gotta walk away and get another one. Just as a side point, guys, before we get all this timing out, so a lot of you guys mentioned on these Sunex sockets that the etching comes off on these, and you can't really see the socket size. And you can see that's happening right here on this 15 millimeter. It's coming off, and I can't see the size in the etching. But it's also engraved on a socket too, and that's never going to come out. So you can see it says CR-MO, which I believe stands for chrome moly, and then it has 15 millimeter here. So same thing on this one. If the etching comes off on that, just spin it around and it has it engraved. So you'll always know what size socket you have with these. So just a side point, shout out to Ghost Legs too, who brought that to my attention. All right, so let's get all these guides out so we can get our chains out. All right, so we got all our gears and our chains out. Definitely want to keep this in a safe place. This don't look cheap if you lose it or break it. And I doubt it comes in any timing kit. All right, we're gonna use the earthquake to bust these things loose. Get some extension on that. Don't want to take a chance rounding this. In the distributor. Alright, so I'm going to take this cylinder head over to the workbench. Alright, so let's go and get this cylinder head put on the workbench. Just a quick word on these gaskets. And any type of gasket, head gasket in general, always check the manufacturer specs for gasket thickness. I typically like to just go with an OE gasket. As you can see here, it does have a gasket thickness spec, so it needs to be at 0.7 millimeter compressed. So just buying any old head gasket won't do it sometimes. You need to make sure you buy a good quality head gasket that actually follows manufacturer specs. That's going to provide a long-lasting seal. Whereas some cheap head gaskets, you may only get like 1,500 miles before you start getting blown head gasket symptoms again. So you can avoid that by buying high quality gaskets or checking the manufacturer specs for the thickness. All right, so at this point, you can go ahead and flip it upside down to get the oil pan off. But before I do that, I'm gonna clean this rat's nest out of this valley. I usually put these little absorbent mats down before we flip it upside down because a lot of oil is going to pour out. There's no way around it. Alright, let's get this oil pan off. Pan off. Get these pickup tube bolts out. There's also a 10 millimeter one here. I already got out. So we got our pickup tube out. I'm gonna take this gasket off. Alright, here we are down to the nitty gritty. At this point, I'm going to pull the oil pump off, which I've already loosened down here when I pulled the timing chains off. So I can pretty much just slide that out. Likely we'll just get them another oil pump too, since it's a full rebuild. Alright, so put the crank bolt back in so I can rotate the crank easier. So let's get All right, here we go. We got a piston right here. So we'll knock this one out. Now, it's critical. I don't know how many of you guys have ever done engine rebuilds, but you can't mix this cap up with this cap. You can't mix this cap up with this cap. These things are machined as one unit. So when you put this bearing cap on, it all becomes sort of one piece. So it's machined together. All right, so you can't mix these caps up. You can't even flip them around this way and put it on that way. It has to go exactly how you pulled it out. It has to come exactly back on that way. All right, a lot of times you want to look for a parting line. Sometimes they'll have stamps on these things so that you don't mix them up. It'll be a number or a design, shape, something where you don't mix them up. In this case, I don't see any numbers or anything like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my own mark here so that when this piston comes out, I'll put it right back on the same place. And you wanna bolt these down right back into place. So when you take it to the machine shop, the machinist, they'll know that all these caps were put right back on in the same place, and actually tighten them back down and make them tight together. That's sort of a universal sign to the machinist that the caps went back on the right way. Our mark. The rod bearings don't look too bad, so that's good. You see the mark I made right here. Push this piston out. Look for scuffing on the pistons. The rings still rotate. That's good. See, oil ring, oil control ring. It doesn't rotate. So the oil control ring I made on there so we don't mix up our orientation. And then we just put our bolts back in there to keep this orientation. All right, so we got one piston ready to go to the machine shop. Good. Next, make our mark. All the bearing caps look pretty good, or the rod bearings. They actually don't look too bad. I mean, there is some sign of wear, but that's to be expected. But not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. These oil control rings are done. All of them are seized up. They don't want to rotate. This one's not moving at all. Anyway, let's get our cap back on. Of course, with our 2 halves marked to make a hole. Rotate by hand now. Okay, so in order to get our crank out, we need to remove the bed plate. So let's start with the outer bolts. Okay, all those were 10 millimeter, and then the rest of the bed plate bolts are 13 millimeter. All right, we got all our outer bed plate bolts, and let's get the main bearing caps off, which is a part of this whole bed plate assembly. So let's start getting them done, getting those loosened up. All right, got all our bolts free. All right, so let's get these bolts out. We're gonna have to put these bolts right back in after we take them out, because this is how you want to take it to the machine shop. All right, so let's pull our bed plate off. I have to work it a bit. Okay, so slide this rear main bearing seal off. Lift our crank out, and you got to be careful because this one's got a trigger ring for the crank sensor. So you don't want to damage that. Of course, you always stand your crank straight up. Get rid of our thrust washers. All this stuff is going to be new. Take a look at our mains. Vanes don't look too bad either, so we know we're not dealing with an oil pressure problem, which is nice. Okay, so we got a little bit of oil accumulating in this pocket, so I'm gonna dump it over and try to get it all out before I put the crank back in. Let some of this oil drain out. So let's wipe some of this out. Knock some of the silicone off. So our bed plate, we're gonna put this back on. Get all the main bearings out. These are all trash now. And we're gonna take it to the machine shop like this. Put our bed plate back on. Okay, this is how you want it to look when you take it to the machine shop. Put your bearing caps back on. In this case, our bed plate. Put it all back on. And also you want to knock out all the freeze plugs and get rid of the oil galley plugs. You want to knock these freeze plugs out. right, let's flip it over and knock out these freeze plugs right here. All right, got our plugs out. And then you got more oil galley plugs right here. So you just get an Allen key, knock those out. Here's some more oil galley plugs. So you just get an Allen socket, knock these out. It's an SAE size Allen socket. Let me go get one, I'll be back. So it's a 3/8 Allen socket. Get these out. All right, so we pretty much stripped down. This is the way every machinist would like to see the block come in, so they can get right to it and start prepping this block, clean out all the water jackets, the oil galleys. It makes work for them a little easier. In turn, they may charge you a little bit less. I've rebuilt so many engines, dozens and dozens of engines, that you sort of develop a relationship with machinists, and you kind of know, the way they want things. So anyway, the block is fully tore down, with the exception to this one galley plug that doesn't really want to come out, so I'll let the machine shop deal with that. And then there's a couple freeze plugs back here, and there's another oil galley plug back there. So we'll knock them out once we get it off the stand. But in the meantime, let's go take a look at the heads. All right, here we are over at the cylinder head. Just gonna do a brief inspection on this and see what's going on. I can't spend too much time with it because, what time is it, Dennis? About 3:30? 3:30. About 3:30, and the machine shop closed at 4:30. I'll make sure I get this stuff dropped off today with my machinist Calvin. All right, so I got this loose so that there's no pressure pushing down on the valve spring, and hopefully it's enough. It'll still keep these rockers in place. So a lot of these engines I've worked on more than I care to work on, and most of the time if you crank one of these things up and you hear engine noise rattling, some type of metallic metal noise, just cut it off. It's drop valve seats. That's what these things do. So you're just gonna cause more problems by keep running them. Best thing to do is to just pull all the spark plugs out, get a bore scope, and look down the spark plug hole into the cylinder, and just look for evidence of metal bits like this in the cylinder. That's pretty much all you gotta do. If you hear any type of metallic noise or rattling noise or knocking sound or anything on these 3.7s and 4.7 Dodges. So that's the best thing to do. Just put a camera in there and look for pieces of valve seat, because that's pretty much what happened. All right, so let's flip this thing over, and first thing I'm gonna check for is if the valves are seating. Let's check to see if these valves are seating. They should be 100% closed with no cam pressure whatsoever on them. We'll take it a step further. We'll make sure we get all these little roller rockers out. These are gonna come back in a box from the machine shop anyway. I'm not gonna leave those in. But we'll leave the cam in just for the sake of travel. So we do gotta run them to the machine shop. Alright, so as you can see, no force whatsoever is on the valve stem tip. So let's check and see if these things are sealed. So let's check them. This is how I always check to see if the valve is seating. This is the best thing, just short of a vacuum tester that machinists use. They usually pull a vacuum on these to test them. Let's see what we got. See, we got some leakage in this one. We'll move on to the next. Leakage out of that one. Actually, a lot of leakage out of that one. It's actually hanging out a bit if you look in there. It's not even bubbling, it's just blowing the bubble. That one's leaking as well. Let's flip it around and check the exhaust valves real quick. Leaking. This one seems to be sealed. I'm expecting this one, this exhaust valve to be bad, really bad. Oh yeah. You guys probably can't tell, but there's literally air just blowing right out of it. This one is actually so bad that you won't see light bubbling like some of the other ones, because it's just blowing straight through. This last one. Well, this one is seated and sealed. On this cylinder head, I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. That other cylinder head, there's leaky valves, so obviously we're gonna get it done in pairs, so there's really no reason to. But I just threw a straight edge on this just to see if there's any warpage going, and it's not real bad, but there is just a little bit in these center cylinders. It looks like this cylinder right here has the lowest point, so it's not 100% flat. If I stick my light behind there, I can see light coming through. I mean, it's pretty easy to see the light coming through. Right here, it's not 100% flat on this corner, but if you move it over to the other one, that one's not exactly 100% flat. I still can see a little bit of light coming through. And on this side, you know, we can't see. So you can see the head is not 100% true. So of course we're gonna get it flattened anyway. I don't know if the filler gauge, if this was out of the warpage limit. I'll post a warpage limit up here for you if you need to know that, if you're doing just a gasket swap job. But I'm doing a full rebuild. We're having this thing fully machined, so it's gonna be 100% flat. All right, well, let's get this thing loaded up and to the machine shop. All right, guys, we got it all loaded up in the back of Dez's Saturn. So we're gonna get this thing over to the machine shop, and so when it comes back, we'll invite you guys along as we start to reassemble. All right, guys, that was the teardown on a 4.7 Dodge. Make sure you stay tuned for part 4 for reassembly. Thanks for tuning in. This is Brian 916. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. We'll see you guys on the next one.